All right, welcome back. My guests are with me right now. Let me start the introduction with my guest here in the studio, Honorable Sergius Ogun. He's a member of the House of Representatives. He's also a member of the Committee on Oil and Gas. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I
also have Olabode Sowunmi, who is joining us virtually. He is the Chief Executive Officer at Cabtree Ltd. Good morning, Mr. Sowunmi. Are you there? Can you see and hear us?
Yes. Good morning. I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay, I can hear you, but I can't hear you well. Your audio is a bit faint, so the audio guys can work on that. Now, Honorable, let's get started. The President will officially unveil the new Nnpc Tuesday, July 19th. Such a long journey.
Yeah. It's a good thing that we are here, even though we have come in a bit late. We missed the opportunity to actually read this game years ago. I mean, PIB took close to 20 years. And by which time most investors moved elsewhere. And today we are here. I don't know what to say, whether we have done well, even with the PIB, talking about the appointment of the board, the people we have there right now, and the processes and all. But it's better to be here than not even move at all. So I want to congratulate, well, again, the National Assembly, the President, and even the Nnpc for this step that we have taken. And if there are another unfortunate thing now that we should be very worried about is even the oil theft. Now, this is when we should be talking about making money from crude oil. We are not making money. We don't have enough. We can't even meet OPEC quota. And then we are talking about subsidy. If we had done this so many years ago, if we had, the PIA was in place so many years ago, most of the things we are suffering now would not necessarily have happened. But it's unfortunate that's where we are today, but maybe hopefully in the nearest future, maybe God will help us get out of this. But it's a bad place to be right now.
We're always bringing God factor into everything in Nigeria.
What can we do when we have entrusted?
We can do a lot.
Well,
we can do a lot with people like you that have been entrusted with authority and others. You know, we can really do a lot. God will just be looking, oh, those people that I've empowered, why are they calling me when I've empowered them with everything? The strength, the grace, and the brain to do all of that. But
okay, if you want to go there, I will stretch it a bit. Because I believe, maybe we'll get there later in this program, the biggest problem with Nnpc so far has been the government. They've been the biggest problem. So having PIA would have helped, but I don't think so. If you look at Nnpc, with the emergence of this new team since 2019, started putting their reports out there. You could go to their nnpc.com, you see all the reports, operations report, audited financial statements and all. But what happened? It stopped from last year. So even the audited report they used to post annually is not there anymore. We don't have the audited report for 2021. What happened? So they came with a good idea, maybe preparing for the PIA, and then what happened now?
Okay, we'll come to that in a bit, talking about disclosure and accountability as well as transparency of the Nnpc. But Mr. Sowunmi, are you there? Director, is Mr. Sowunmi there? Can you hear? Can you see me? Okay, good. Now, what are your own views about what's already happening? That the president will just finally unveil on July 19th. Mr. Sowunmi, if you can hear me, can you unmute? I can see you. Can you unmute and perhaps if you could, if you heard my question? Okay, it seems he can't hear me. Let me come back to you, Honorable. It's been a long road so far. What does this really mean now that the Nnpc has become a limited?
Well, it means that we can play in the public space. It's a public liability company.
No, limited
liability company. And the transparency that I thought this new management brought into place will now continue. They are now compared to continue in this light. It's not the case of receiving instruction from nobody because the karma clearly has stated how they should go. You know, and then there will be more transparency. It means that everything you do is out there, so you can expect foreign direct investment. You know, people can see what you are doing and then thereafter invest. Although there's another area I think we're going to go into later. This is a limited liability company, but it's still owned by the federal government. You know, I remember when we were putting this law in place, we pushed for, why don't we just sell shares almost immediately? They say it would not be nice to go in that direction. Well, maybe to some extent I want to believe them. But what we should be asking now that we have Nnpc Limited, is incorporated now, within how many years should you go public? I remember when Kachukwu came some years ago, he said by 2017, Nnpc will go public. What happened?
Of course, that's his history.
Same Kachukwu said there's going to be deregulation. Some months after, is under recovery. You know, so we had opportunities in the past to do certain things. Like I said, it's because, you know, Nnpc is government. But now that is a limited liability company, we want to believe that there will be transparency. People can see what is happening in there, so that in the nearest future, when we want to go public and people can understand what is happening there and maybe buy shares in there.
I think from the law, it is expected that by next year, if I'm not mistaken, Nnpc is expected to go public. That's list its shares on the exchange. That's the NGX.
Have they stated that categorically?
Let's hope that it will happen. Those are part of the expectations. Can we get Olabode Sowunmi online now? Okay. I guess the network is not being friendly. Let's try and reconnect with him again. But if we can't do that, we can actually switch to audio if the video is actually giving us some kind of issue. Okay. Honorable, so much to talk about when it comes to the Nnpc. You did say earlier that the government is the problem of the Nnpc. Why?
Yeah, because it's a government company. It's been said here and there in government places that Nnpc is used for extra budgetary expenses. And when you say this, it's not just this government, even previous government. Now, to change bad habits, it doesn't happen overnight. You know, so if we don't do something quickly, the next government will come. I mean, there's going to be a transition now in 2023. There's going to be another government. So we should do the right things now so that when they come, if the plan is to go back to Nnpc and be doing all that usually a federal government would do with Nnpc will not be available for that anymore, because we will not have an Nnpc Limited. There's a most likely public quoted company, you know. So that would be my advice. But like I said, we have excellent people working in Nnpc. If they play in any space, they will do extremely well. I will just give an example of Kachukwu. Came here from mobile, was on fire and everything. So everything he said were all reversed. They also made mention of even the present management team, you know, led by the GMD. By 2019, we had the audited report of 2019-2020. So what happened to that of 2021? You know? So like I said, it's government. If you take the government out of it and allow it to be managed properly, you know, some of these things will not even happen. You will have a company that will compete with, you know, its kind, Petronas, Petrobras, you know, and the rest of them. You know, Saudi Aramco.
Yeah, we'll come to that because Saudi Aramco is such a very good example. Now, I think in 2019, they did just bring out 1.5% of its company, and they made about over $25 billion because of just selling about 1.5%. Okay. But let's go back to Mr. Sowunmi, and I hope that we can get him now. Mr. Sowunmi, if you can hear me, my question is, what actually is your opinion about Nnpc becoming limited that became official July 1, 2022? Is Mr. Sowunmi there, please? Okay, let's try to still reconnect. Now, you know that when it comes to the Nnpc, you know, a lot of controversy always surrounding Nnpc. Nnpc, you know, a lot of analysts or even a lot of people likes to whip at the Nnpc over a lot of things. But if we're still looking at what this means for the Nnpc Limited, can you explain perhaps in basic terms, apart from other things which you have explained, what okay, I'm being told that Mr. Sowunmi is on phone now. Mr. Sowunmi, if you can hear me, I was actually asking what your opinions are concerning the new Nnpc that became officially known as Nnpc Limited from July 1, 2022. What are your views?
Okay, thank you very much. I think with the new Nnpc, the main thing will be the concerns for them to become a big company, as envisioned by the legislature for which the honourable member is one. I think more importantly, rather than the vision and everything that has been envisioned, it is for them to serve the interest of Nigeria. And one of the areas where the interest of Nigerians can be felt to the grassroots is for them to get to unravel what is behind the subsidy regime. The subsidy regime has become like a behemoth on the neck of people without any real explanation. And behind it is the fact that it is largely not transparent. So we believe that a company that wants to be listed on the stock exchange and that will be listed on the stock exchange will have its books open to the public for scrutiny, and it's in that process that everything that concerns the subsidy regime can be exposed. I think perhaps that would be the biggest benefit for a transparent Nnpc to Nigerians.
Okay, Mr. Sowunmi, let me still stick with you a bit because the Honourable actually raised earlier the issue of the transparency of the Nnpc. Do you think that Nnpc becoming a limited right now would take away the opaqueness from the Nnpc and make it a bit clearer? Or has the opaqueness left and it's going to be clear but not too clear? You understand what I mean? Because opaqueness, yes. You understand, as in the opaqueness is gone, but how much clarity are we going to get from the Nnpc?
Well, the transparency or the better Nnpc is actually dependent on the people and the culture of the people. That's the organizational culture. However, what the KAMA laws, the new KAMA laws, and the fact that it's becoming a liability company, what they do is that they provide a structure for which transparency can be helped. So basically, it is now left for other stakeholders, which includes the beneficiary, which includes the media, which includes NGOs, and everybody who has a hand in the pie in the industry, to put a critical amount of pressure on them to be transparent. So we need to realize that human beings naturally don't move towards the right thing, but pressures either by inducements or by punitive measures can help people to do the right thing. So it is not too relevant whether Nnpc itself will want to be opaque or want to be transparent. But it is more relevant that the society, the industry, and all other stakeholders put the right amount of pressure on them for them to be transparent. I think we should be looking at it that way.
Now, what will transparency mean for the Nnpc? Because Honourable also said earlier the issue of disclosing their financial statements. We've seen this at least in the few years, 3-4 years, at least since Mele Kyari assumed the position of the GMD. He will now be known as the GCEO. I need to put that. So he won't be, yes, that's him there on TV. That's the new group chief executive officer. That's his new nomenclature now, not GMD. That's GCEO of the Nnpc Limited. So what will transparency mean for the Nnpc? What does it mean for the Nnpc Limited? Because why I ask that question is disclosure the same as transparency? Because for me, you know, it's a bit dicey. If you're going to be disclosing your financial statement, does that mean you're entirely transparent?
Well, disclosure is a step towards transparency, but the transparency also means accountability. It also means verifiableness, which means that if operations can be subject to being verifiable. So if you take the case of the subsidy, which means that the landing cost for the finished products need to be made public, need to be verifiable. The ships, the trucks that bring it into country need to be known. They need to be questioned. The refineries that process the DSD can also be. Also, the transparency basically means that whatever is happening there can be verified. But the biggest impact that it will have on the Nnpc will be its own capacity to grow. Because corruption and opaqueness, even though people benefit from it, actually hinders the whole picture. So the industry itself will be limited in its ability to grow. The company itself will be limited in its ability to grow. With greater transparency, you will be seeing a mega company in the likes of Saudi Aramco or even Shell. So we are going to be going towards a global company, a sizable company that can compete on that outfit. So that's something we should look forward to in a more transparent and a more accountable Nnpc going forward.
Honorable, do you have anything to add in terms of the transparency, accountability? Because for the Nnpc Limited, it will also need to, make returns, in this case to the government, pay CIT, company income tax to the government that also will be shared by everyone. Just like private companies do, they would also be in the marketplace and all of that.
Yeah. Well, I agree with Olabode. I agree with him completely. That transparency is very important because now we are talking about if they're going to go public in the future, people will need to know where they're going to invest their money in. And the other thing that really worries me is even the assets. I think around 2010, 2015, we had the federation assets. The IOCs divested some of their assets. So some of those assets, the federation owned, the one for the national or Nnpc, were housed with MPDC. Have they paid for the shares? That's a lot of money. That's one. Then we're talking about the deep offshores. Have we been able to properly evaluate? Yes, granted the IOCs are operating there. Of course, they recoup their money from the sale of crude oil. So have we been able to properly evaluate or value the assets before we are transferring them to Nnpc Limited now? And then we also have so many subsidiaries, Nnpc subsidiaries, Duke Oil, Vitor, Nap Oil, all of them. So how much of the federation assets that are with them do we really know that we are transferring to Nnpc Limited? I think these are still some of the critical questions we have to ask, because we are saying people will invest in the future. How much of these assets are you transferring there? Because we know we are still going to have Nnpc, the toxic assets that will be left with Nnpc, maybe before you completely unwind it. But so we need, I think there's a lot we still need them to disclose.
To disclose.
Yes.
Okay. I also, just to add to what you're saying, I know that there are a group of consultants, and I did read it earlier this morning, that are working on assets valuation and all of that. I think PwC, KPMG, Wood McKinsey, Olaniwu, and LP, who else again? McKinsey. Okay. A group of consultants that are currently working on this. But I totally agree with you that they still need to disclose a lot more. And perhaps when the president unveils this new, or when the egg is hatched, because I've seen a whole lot of things going on in town around the Nnpc Limited. But let me come back to you. Do you have anything to say concerning what the Honorable has raised in terms of asset valuation? What should we be looking at? Because there also be liabilities that has also been transferred to the new Nnpc Limited.
Now, just like when the power sector was privatized, a company was created, Nemco, which was responsible for basically the liability. I think it's basically an operational issue for which it will be a responsibility between government and government. So in this case, I think the National Assembly will have a say, based on their oversight functions, to ask questions about the liability, who's going to be responsible, and that Nnpc did not just come out of the vacuum. So it basically was an entity owned by the Nigerian people. So that entity, which is now transformed into a limited liability company, there needs to be some explanation in terms of who owns what shares, so what aspect of it belongs to the federal government, what aspect belongs to the state government. Some of all those details need to be ironed out. But basically, it's an internal thing, so it's a government-to-government issue where they need to ask themselves questions and cross T's and dot I's.
Now, Olabode, let me still stick with you. Because of what we're seeing now, the new Nnpc Limited, we should also say that the Nnpc is free from the TSA. I hope people, yes, I hope that's a Treasury single account. I hope that we're taking note of that too. So the Nnpc wouldn't be, remitting into the TSA anymore because it's now a private company. Bode?
Well, I mean, that largely is an operational issue. In terms of, for me, it's neither here nor there in terms of transparency. What is most important is that the right things are done. Because as a private company, they are going to make their accounts available to the CAC, that's CAMA. They are going to make those accounts available to the stock exchange. And people who may have concerns about their operations can take those accounts as well as the ones that they make public and check. So for me, rather than looking at some of the nuances, we should first allow the process to work. And I'm sure that in the process of just a normal limited liability company doing its work, they will be forced to be more effective and forced to be more productive for the Nigerian people.
Okay, you said that they would open their books to the stock exchange. I think that will be done when the company is listed on the stock exchange. It won't be done now. It will be done when it is listed.
Yeah, but because they're a limited liability company now, at the minimum, they will have to make a copy of their accounts available to the CAC.
Yeah, that they will do because they are bound by CAMA rules now to do that. The issues surrounding investments of the Nnpc. We saw the Nnpc securing $5 billion to fund major investment from Afrexim Bank. They did that a few months ago, if I'm not mistaken. I know that the GCEO of the Nnpc went to the Afrexim Bank and they did secure that. What will this portend now for new investments into the country? Or have we really totally missed it? Why I'm asking, if you take a look at the price of oil now, is over $100 US a barrel. We're still not gaining from it because of the subsidy issue, So how will this new Nnpc Limited get new investments? Because with what it is right now, it's going to go in there and seek, attract investments.
Well, we said something about the transparency and even the audits that's probably going, or the evaluation that's going on right now. The investment will come when people can go through their books and say, look, this is a good place to invest money in. It's not a charity. Investors, people talk about, oh, you're allowing foreigners to come in. And foreigners, we have to look at, what do you have? Can I invest my money here and can I take that money out? So talking about those investments, those monies will come definitely, but we still need to let the world know where the way we run this company now is a limited liability company now. I'll give you an example, the West African gas pipeline, the EGTL, Extravos Gas to Liquid project. There's a whole lot of government, federation investment there that I don't think we know about. But let's assume the valuation will bring out most of this information. Because I think where we really need that investment badly now is actually the gas. Imagine Europe, they're talking about gas. There's been this Moroccan pipeline, Moroccan pipeline, gas pipeline, that's been on at the far back in the days of Yar'Adua. Imagine if we're transporting gas, if we have the infrastructure to produce gas, like they keep telling us that Nigeria is a gas nation, not even crude. So imagine if we had developed that sector. We say we don't have the money because you have to first bring out the gas and then build the infrastructure. So imagine if we're transporting or exporting gas to Europe right now, where they badly need gas, the kind of money we'll be making right now. So the investment is not a problem. People will invest as long as the environment is right. But you need to let them know what is going on. They should be able to see it and not hearsay. So that's where I think this transparency, and when they finish the full evaluation of what assets that are being transferred to Nnpc Limited, people will begin to show interest as long as they can see the books and discover that they can invest and get their money back.
Okay, but What I can get from what Honorable is saying this morning is that Nnpc Limited still needs to talk, and communicate with Nigerians in terms of what is expected from the new company. But let's talk about perhaps business continuity from the Nnpc moving forward after the president's unveiling. In terms of expansion of businesses, I'm taking a look at, will the Nnpc be having more filling stations, for example, that is expanding into a downstream sector or downstream operations? Will they be having more of gas storages, bottling plants, and what have you? What do you expect, really?
You know, in terms of how they choose to go about it, whether they want to invest more in infrastructure, like in the gas pipelines, like Honorable had mentioned, or they want to go more into downstream, or they even want to go into upstream by doing more gas processing and more exploration, is actually a judgment call of the leadership. So it's basically their own idea of how they want to expand. But irrespective of whatever they choose, it is my calculated opinion that if things are done rightly and there's limited chance for them to shortchange the system, over time the right thing will be done. But having said that, what the nation needs primarily the most is a lot of investment in gas. Like Honorable mentioned, one of the things with gas is that it offers what you can call even development across the country. Because with appropriate gas infrastructure, for which the AKK is one of it, you have the capacity to have a cottage industry in every local government in the nation. What that means is that you can have something. It can be a factory that is producing buttons. It can be processing cashew nuts. It can be processing oranges. But there is the capacity for us to have a factory in every local government. What that will imply on the long run is that it will halt rural-urban migration. So if people are assured that they can stay wherever they are, even in villages, and live a comfortable life and earn good income, then there's no pressure to come to their own Lagos. More importantly, it will ensure even development. So there will be proper development across board, infrastructure, schools, and all that. That is the dream, and that is the promise of what proper development within gas can do, and which is the overall belief behind the gas master plan, which has also been incorporated into the PIE. So I will believe and I will think that it will be one of the areas that the new management or the reviewed management under the Nnpc will be looking towards in terms of their initial goals to being of benefits to Nigeria.
Can we talk about what the rest of the world are also talking about? Talking of carbon emissions, you know, it's about renewables, now it's about the green economy, it's about reduction of fossil fuels. How do you think that the new Nnpc Limited can be part of all this? Or are we still living in limbo that the world will still need fuel or crude oil, at least for years to come, and we're still behaving as a new and beautiful bride? Okay,
so for me, and for anybody who is technical, we need to first look at the fact that whether it is renewable energy, whether it is energy transition and all that, they are all a subset of energy. And the first and primary responsibility of any energy need is to make sure you meet your energy needs. So it's energy security. And that has been shown even in Europe, who have changed their policies that are 10 years old overnight as a result of energy insecurity by the Ukraine war. For us as a people, we need to develop a homegrown energy policy that will suit our needs, first of all, before doing a me-too strategy that will meet the world's needs. Because there is no point wanting to fly when you cannot even crawl. The first thing is that we need energy. We need energy to run our factories, to run our schools, to run equipment. When that energy is met, then we can now be looking at the source of the energy, where we need to refine what, where we don't. Because the most polluting source of energy in the world today is not oil. It is actually coal. And it may be interesting to note that 40% of global electricity still comes from coal. And it is in the developing countries. It is in the developed countries, not in the developing countries. So rather than trying to satisfy the desires of the world, it is best important that we use what we have, which is oil. We meet our energy needs. Then we can now start to talk about what the world needs. Yes, we need. Our plans may not be focused towards export and all of that, but we need to actually meet the energy needs of a growing 200 plus million people and ensure proper development here. And after that, we can now be looking at the other sexy options of carbon emissions and the rest. But that would be my view in those areas.
Okay, before I come to the Honorable, let's actually take our viewers through some of the things that might change with the new Nnpc Limited. We put that earlier on. Can we have that card very quickly, where at least to explain to Nigerians in basic terms really what all of this means? So it's not as if we're speaking too much grammar. We just have to break it down. Very good, that's it on the screen. Nnpc's transition to a limited liability company, which started July 1. That's talking about the operations, July 1, 2022. The president will unveil Tuesday, July 19th, 2022. What does this mean? It means that the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation becomes Nnpc Limited now. So don't call it Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation. Just say Nnpc Limited. That's it. That's what it means. Like you all have your companies. Those of you at home or on your mobile phones watching me right now, you have your companies, ABC Limited, XYZ Limited. That's how it is right now, Nnpc Limited. Nnpc Limited floated initial capital of 200 billion naira, and that is the highest share capital in the country. What that means, if you want to go set up a company with the CSE, you're like, okay, 1 million shares and all of that. The Nnpc Limited has floated initial capital of 200 billion naira, making it the highest share capital in the country and indeed Africa. So that's making it the biggest. Mele Kyari is still the chief executive of the Nnpc Limited, but he will now be addressed as the group chief executive officer. That's the group CEO. The Nnpc Limited is to comply with the provisions of the KAMA Act 2020, like my guests have been explaining earlier. Now let's move to the second page. Very quickly, the Nnpc is required to declare dividends, and in this case, the dividends to the federal government. But let's see what we actually change. The Nnpc Limited retains 20% of profit as retained earnings to grow its business. So out of what it would make, 20% of what it will make as profit, it will be retained as earnings to grow its business. All assets and liability of Nnpc is transferred to the new company. And from the PIA Act, I do understand that this should happen within 18 months of when the president signed the PIA. So the first 18 months of the PIA lifetime, that all assets and liabilities of the Nnpc will be transferred to the Nnpc Limited. And when the transition takes effect, all existing contracts and joint operating agreements, as the JOAs with the Nnpc, will be evaluated and transferred in line with agreed principles to ensure business continuity. What else do we have the Nnpc Limited to pay taxes and royalties? So it would also be paying company income tax to the government. The Nnpc secured, like I mentioned earlier, $5 billion from the Afri-Exim Bank to fund major investments in the upstream sector. It is expected that the Nnpc Limited will be listed on the stock exchange. That is not immediate, and let's see what happens in a few months or perhaps in a year or 2 years' time. Let's see what happens. But it is the idea, or rather the wish of the Nnpc to list on the NGX PLC, where you can buy shares. What it means is that if the Nnpc lists the shares on the stock exchange, you as an ordinary Nigerian can get the shares of the Nnpc and you become a shareholder of the Nnpc Limited, just like you're a shareholder of other companies listed on the exchange. So I needed to give you that background information so that you understand what this means. Honorable, you want to come in here? I see that you were writing down something, so yeah. Fire on.
I think this last item is very important and very critical, because I don't think they're in a hurry to go public, because I raised this matter and I remember the response I got.
You raised it where?
During the PIB that transited to PIA now, they are not in a hurry to go public. That's one. And secondly, as it stands today, Nnpc Limited is still a government-owned company. I'm sure we are aware of that. You know, it's still
Government shareholders.
They are the shareholders. Yeah. So what we should be driving at, otherwise they will still run it to become like a court. You know, if you don't like what Olabode was saying in the short while back. So till they go public and you have government becomes a minority shareholder. We have an example of NLNG.
NLNG, yeah.
Sometime last year, the president was full of praises for NLNG. That I mean, we have 95% of Nigerians manning it, and yet they bring it dividends all the time, and it's properly managed, and the government is making good money from it. So why can't we replicate that in Nnpc? So I do not think, like I said, they're in a hurry to go public, but that's something we should push them to do. And there are still a whole lot of questions that I don't want to ask today, because you look at the board, it doesn't give anybody that wants to invest in Nnpc going forward a whole lot of confidence.
Why?
Who are the people there? If I want to buy shares in a company, should I not look at those in the board?
They have an existing board.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the individuals there. And then if you look at the downstream, okay, the Nigerian Downstream and Midstream Regulatory Authority, and then the Upstream and Regulatory Commission. Those people, again, those are supposed to be the regulators that will even regulate Nnpc Limited. But how did they emerge, the chief executives there? They are appointees of Nnpc. So these are things that we should critique, so that we don't begin to have issues in the nearest future. And they must come up, whether we like it or not. So we should begin to ask those questions right now, so that we get it right from the beginning.
Okay, but just as we close, do you have any other thing to say? The Honorable has also raised the vital matter, because earlier on we saw the Nnpc being an operator and also a regulator. In this case, who regulates the Nnpc? And
okay, I think for me, it's I'm looking more towards the positive side, because the truth is that Nnpc has its issues as it currently is. Some of those issues will remain for a while because of the organizational culture within the organization. But we want to believe that being metamorphosized into a limited liability company will make it a better organization. But it should be understood that Nnpc as a limited liability company is different from the limited liability companies that a lot of people have, which you have registered with CAC, primarily because the owners, the shareholders registered with CAC is purely government. So Nnpc can be compared to a company like MBET, that's the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading Company. Yes, which even though it's a limited liability company, is more or less a government agency. So it will take some time for all that to change. And like Honorable himself mentioned, that there is a need to shed up more of the weight of government within the shareholding structure so that it can become more effective. Whether that happens in 6 months, or it happens in 6 years, or it happens in 60 years is a different thing. But for us, for the industry, for the nation at large, what is important is that the things that will really help the country, like the focus on the Trans-Saharan gas pipeline, that is the pipeline that will go from here to Europe, attention needs to be put in that as a matter of urgency. Development of infrastructure across the country, so that virtually everywhere has access to gas. Okay. Attention needs to be put into that. The development of the subsidy regime, so that it is more transparent and it does no longer becomes a burden to the nation. The attention needs to be put into that. So irrespective of the structure, if these major things are done, then there's no problem.
Okay.
The structure is one thing, but it's important that it delivers the goods to the people.
Okay. Let's be hopeful, and on that optimistic note, let's end the show, because you're very optimistic as to what this process would definitely bring. But I want to say many thanks to both of you for joining me on the show today. I've been speaking with Honorable Sergius Ogun, who is a member of the House of Representatives, and as well as Olabode Sowunmi, who is the Chief Executive Officer at Cabtree Ltd. We've been looking at Nnpc's transition fully to a limited liability company. The President unveils July 19. That's the much we can take on today's edition of the program. Thank you all for your company. Be the best you can be that change that you want to see. I am Nancy Nnaji. Bye now.